Okay, so you want to own a Viking Longship, raise the sail, fill 60 benches, and watch an entire coastline notice you before you even reach the shore. That is the attractive version. Here is the first problem. Your ship is on the beach, and the benches are empty. No crew, no food, no water, no spare rope, no one to patch the sail, no one to replace a damaged steering oar. You have a long wooden hull that took an extraordinary amount of work to build, and at this exact moment it cannot go anywhere. So what did you actually buy? That question sounds simple until you look at one real vessel. Skuldelev Two was a large seagoing warship built near Dublin around the year 1042. It was roughly 29 meters long, designed for 60 oars, and probably carried somewhere around 65 to 70 people. This was not a general-purpose boat. It was a chieftain's ship, built to move a large group quickly across open water and into shallow coastal routes. From the outside, that looks like power made out of oak. From the beach, it also looks like a very large obligation. Before it can protect a coast, serve a ruler, reach a market, or return with anything of value, somebody has to build it, somebody has to equip it, somebody has to fill every bench, and somebody has to keep doing that after the first voyage is over. And the part that decides whether the ship becomes power or dead timber is not the part most people notice first. Start with the word own. A modern owner usually buys the asset, pays the bills, hires the workers, controls the operation, and keeps whatever remains. A Viking Age warship could split those responsibilities across several people. One person might provide the timber or sponsor the construction, another might command the ship, crew members might bring some of their own equipment, a king might appoint the person responsible for readiness, a coastal district might be expected to supply men, food, or maintenance. Later Norwegian law describes a role called the styremother, the person responsible for the ship. Depending on the situation, that could include overseeing construction, selecting crew, making sure equipment existed, arranging winter storage, and completing repairs before the next sailing season. On a large royal vessel, that person might be exercising the king's authority rather than treating the ship as unrestricted private property. Those laws were written down after the Viking Age, so they are not a perfect guide to every earlier voyage, but they show why the title is already more complicated than it looks. The person at the steering oar may command the ship without personally owning every plank, feeding every man from his own fields, or keeping every reward. You can possess the hull and still depend on other people for almost everything that makes it useful. So let us buy the visible part first. The experimental reconstruction of Skuldelev Two required about 150 cubic meters of wood for the vessel itself. Then came additional pine wood for tar, roughly 400 kilograms of raw iron rope material, tools, transport, and the work required to turn standing trees into a hull that could survive long voyages. The reconstruction team counted roughly 27,000 work hours for the hull and around 40,000 hours once the sail, rigging, tar, ironwork, and related production were included. 40,000 hours before the ship carries one useful load or completes one useful mission. That is a modern experimental reconstruction, not a Viking invoice. The workers were documenting historical methods and rebuilding skills that had once been familiar. A well-organized Viking workforce could likely move faster. The museum has estimated that a master builder directing around 10 boat builders, with specialists working around them, might complete a vessel of this scale in roughly 7 months. But 7 months is still 7 months of people cutting, splitting, shaping, drilling, riveting, sealing, lifting, and feeding everyone doing the work. The oak has to come from land controlled by somebody. The iron has to be produced before it becomes a rivet. Tar requires its own fuel and labor. Tools break, workers eat. Timber has to be transported to the building site. A plank cut badly is wasted timber and wasted labor, and much of this cost may never appear as one clean payment. It can appear as labor owed, food supplied, rights to timber, obligations to a powerful household, gifts to specialists, or production redirected away from other work. That is why trying to put one modern price on a Viking longship is so misleading. The silver matters. It just cannot capture the full cost. The shipyard is already testing how much production one person or institution can direct before the vessel ever reaches the water. Now the hull is finished. You are still missing the largest object on the ship, the sail. A square sail looks almost too simple to be expensive. It is one large piece of cloth hanging from one mast. But cloth on this scale is not an accessory. It is an agricultural project, a household industry, and a huge store of skilled labor suspended above the deck. The reconstructed sail for Skuldelev Two covers approximately 112 square meters. The original did not survive, so we cannot say with certainty whether it was wool, flax, or some combination. But experimental work on another reconstructed Viking Age vessel shows the scale. A wool sail of about 90 square meters used usable fiber from as many as 200 sheep. 200 sheep for a sail smaller than the one above Skuldelev Two. First, the animals have to be raised, then sheared. The wool has to be sorted, cleaned, prepared, and spun into an enormous quantity of yarn. That yarn has to be woven tightly enough to perform under load. Separate sections have to be joined. The finished cloth has to be treated so it holds its shape and handles moisture. By the time the sail rises, almost all of that work has disappeared from view. You see wind filling cloth. You do not see the fields, the animals, the spinning, the looms, or the households that spent months turning fiber into movement. And the sail changes the economics of the entire vessel. Under oars, distance is purchased with human exhaustion. Under sail, the ship can travel without burning through the crew at the same rate. The sail does not simply make the ship faster, it allows the ship to use its people for something other than rowing every minute of the voyage. So now you have the oak, iron, tar, ropes, mast, and sail. The ship looks complete enough to appear on every painting and museum poster. Skuldelev Two still needs roughly 65 to 70 people. That is where the ownership fantasy stops being about an object and starts becoming about other people's lives. 60 oars do not move because the ship is impressive, they move because 60 people arrive, sit down, understand the command, and keep pulling when they are cold, tired, wet, frightened, or far from home. The crew has to steer, manage the sail, stand watches, repair damage, handle lines, carry equipment, and function together on a crowded open deck. They need clothing, weapons, or tools appropriate to the voyage, and some reason to accept the risk. Even if there is no regular wage, every crew member has a cost. He eats, he expects support, reward, status, protection, or a share of whatever the voyage produces. He may be fulfilling a legal obligation, serving a ruler, following a magnate, joining an expedition, or responding to a relationship built over years. And every man aboard is missing somewhere else. He is not tending animals, he is not repairing a roof, he is not cutting hay, he is not helping with harvest. The ship does not create 60 new workers. It pulls 60 workers out of the land economy and concentrates them on one narrow deck. That creates a second cost that never appears in the hull. Opportunity. A voyage launched at the wrong time can collide with the work that keeps households alive through winter. A leader asking men to sail is not merely requesting courage. He is asking farms, workshops, and families to function without them. And the crew cannot be treated as a replaceable pile of muscle. A large open ship requires coordination. If the people at the benches do not trust the person giving orders, the problem is not just morale, it becomes speed, discipline, repair, watchkeeping, and survival. A beautiful longship with half a crew is not half as useful. It may not be useful at all. Picture the benches filling one person at a time. The first rower is not just a pair of arms. He brings his clothing, equipment, appetite, judgment, and relationship with the leader. Then the next man does the same, and the next. By the time the 60th oar is covered, the ship is carrying dozens of separate reasons to stay, dozens of separate reasons to leave, and dozens of households absorbing the absence. That matters the moment the voyage becomes unpleasant. The wind drops and the sail stops doing the work. The crew rows, weather delays the landing. Watches still have to be kept. A repair takes longer than expected. Food and water continue disappearing whether the ship is making progress or sitting still. A modern engine does not need to believe in the owner. A human crew does, not in the romantic sense. In the practical one, the men have to believe that the command is competent, that the purpose is worth the danger, that supplies exist, and that whatever reward or protection was promised will still matter when they return. The owner can replace a broken rope from storage. Replacing lost confidence is harder. This is why a single successful voyage does not settle the economics. You can build the hull once. You need the people again next season. A crew that returns empty-handed may not return at all. A leader who distributes rewards badly can discover that his ship is still on the shore when the weather turns favorable. Now fill every bench. The next problem is heavy, wet, and impossible to negotiate with. Water. Later Norwegian legal material gives a daily ration for hard physical work equal to roughly 880 grams of flour and 285 grams of butter per person. The same material suggests a minimum of about 4 liters of water per person per day. These are later figures, not a surviving supply list for Skuldelev Two, but use them for one simple planning exercise. 65 people for 14 days require more than 3,500 liters of water. Then add approximately 1 metric ton of flour and butter. Now put those barrels and sacks on the deck beside the crew. the personal gear, the tools, the spare rope, the repair timber, and whatever the voyage is supposed to bring back. The longship is fast because it is long, narrow, light, and filled with human power. Those same qualities leave limited room for everything required to keep that human power alive. Cooking aboard an open warship is difficult, so coastal landings for water and hot food become part of the plan. A route is not simply a line across a map. It is a chain of places where the crew can land, refill, eat, repair, wait for weather, and leave again. The ship looks like freedom from the shore. Its range is partly built out of shorelines. This also explains why a longship is not simply the Viking version of a profitable cargo vessel. A broader ship such as the reconstructed Otter can carry around 20 tons with a much smaller crew. Its hull is designed to devote space to goods. The longship devotes that space to people. One ship makes its living by carrying cargo efficiently. The other gives up much of that efficiency to move armed manpower, authority, protection, or political intention quickly. So if your plan is ordinary freight, you have chosen an expensive way to do it. You are feeding dozens of people who occupy space that could otherwise carry saleable goods. The ship's advantage has to come from something speed and manpower can accomplish that a slower cargo vessel cannot. This is where people usually jump to one answer: raiding, sail somewhere, take valuables, come home richer. That happened. So did trade, military service, settlement, coastal protection, tribute collection, and work for rulers who needed ships. But none of these gives the vessel a smooth, predictable stream of income, and violent seizure should not be treated as admirable simply because some participants profited from it. A violent expedition could destroy communities, take captives, and enrich a leader while leaving others dead, wounded, or empty-handed. It could also fail. The target might be defended. Weather might close the route. Another force might intercept the ship. Equipment might be lost. Damage might consume the value brought home. And even success opens a question that the hull cannot answer. Who gets what? Does the sponsor receive a larger share because he provided the ship? Does the commander receive more because he led the voyage? Do specialists receive extra? Does a king claim part of the result? Are gifts distributed to preserve loyalty? Does the crew receive silver, goods, land, protection, or a promise of future opportunity? We do not have a complete operating account for Skuldelev Two, and there was no single formula covering every expedition. That uncertainty matters because a ship can return with wealth and still leave its support network weaker if the distribution destroys trust. The return may not even appear as money earned by the ship. A ruler can use a vessel to protect trade and preserve revenue elsewhere. A magnate can gain status by arriving with a large following. A king can move men quickly enough to enforce authority over a wider area. Service abroad can produce payment, gifts, access, or alliances. So the ship may create enormous value without behaving like a merchant vessel with a clean freight rate. That sounds attractive until the sailing season ends. The crew goes home. The sail comes down. The ship is pulled onto land, and the costs do not disappear. Later legal traditions assign responsibility for winter storage, repairs, and readiness before the next season. Modern reconstruction voyages show why. A steering component loosens. Wooden fasteners need replacement. Rigging wears. Seams have to be watched. A damaged sail has to be patched. Small failures that look harmless on the beach become serious once the ship is offshore. Now remember Skuldelev Two. Its 60 oars advertise capacity. Its length advertises status. Its sail advertises range. But none of those visible features tells you whether the vessel is ready today. A smaller ship with a complete crew, sound rigging, food, water, and a clear purpose may be more valuable than a larger ship waiting for repairs and missing half its men. Size is visible, readiness is not. That is the misleading success metric hiding inside the longship. The grandest hull can become expensive dead capacity without losing any of the features that made it impressive from a distance. And this is where the real economic advantage finally appears. It is not the ability to build one ship once. It is the ability to rebuild the voyage every season. The developed medieval Norwegian Lidang shows one way rulers organized that problem. Coastal districts could be required to supply ships, crews, equipment, and provisions for royal service. The exact early development of the system is uncertain, and it would be wrong to project its later rules onto every Viking Age fleet. But the logic is clear. Do not make one household carry the entire ship. Spread the burden across many of them. One area provides men, another contributes food. Specialists maintain the vessel. A commander organizes readiness. A king or magnate supplies authority, purpose, and some form of reward or protection. The important advantage is not that one powerful person personally pays for every barrel, rope, and work hour. It is that he can cause those things to arrive repeatedly. A wealthy merchant might be able to buy timber and iron. He might even commission a beautiful hull. What he cannot purchase as easily is 60 trained people who trust one another, farms willing to release them at the right moment, households prepared to supply food, craftsmen ready to repair damage, and a political reason strong enough to make the arrangement happen again after a poor season. That support might involve law, duty, shared defense, personal loyalty, reciprocal reward, pressure, or coercion. Historical systems could combine all of them, but whatever the arrangement, it had to survive contact with reality. A bad harvest makes provisions harder to gather. A failed expedition weakens the promise of reward. Poor distribution damages loyalty. Missing specialists delay repairs. Delay can erase the short sailing window. The ship remains on shore, which means it produces no useful result, which makes the next demand for labor and food harder to justify. Now the failures are no longer separate. They feed one another. This is the difference between owning a long ship for one glorious day and controlling one as a durable instrument of power. The hull is a major expense. The recurring achievement is getting the same network to support it again. Skuldelev Two gives that idea a final strange ending. The ship was built near Dublin around the year 1042. It required an enormous concentration of timber, iron, textile work, specialist knowledge, and manpower. It was designed to move quickly with a large crew. It eventually reached the waters near Roskilde. Then its economic purpose changed completely. The vessel was filled with stones and sunk in a channel as part of a defensive barrier. The ship built to move became useful because it could no longer move. We do not know every voyage it made. We do not know the name of its owner. We do not know exactly how profitable or successful it had been. It may simply have become too worn for active service while retaining value as material for defense. But the reversal matters. The same object first consumed a regional production effort. Then it became mobile capacity that only existed when crew, provisions, repairs, and authority came together. Finally, when that operating role was no longer worth preserving, the hull became static infrastructure. The wood did not decide what the ship was worth. The surrounding need did. So does owning a Viking Longship actually work? Put two identical ships on the same beach. The first belongs to a controller with productive land, food stores, access to timber, skilled workers, loyal followers, and enough authority to assemble a crew without renegotiating the entire arrangement every spring. He can repair the hull through winter. He can provision the voyage without emptying one farm. He has a reason to move 60 people quickly, and he can distribute enough protection, reward, status, or opportunity to keep the arrangement alive. For him, the longship can be extraordinarily valuable. It can protect trade, support military service, strengthen alliances, carry authority, and turn resources spread across many miles of land into action somewhere else. The second person owns the same hull but none of those relationships. Every voyage begins with bargaining. Every barrel has to be found. Every repair waits for a specialist. Every crew member has another place he could be. If the weather changes, the food is still consumed. If the voyage fails, the obligations remain. If rewards disappoint, the benches may be empty next year. For that owner, the ship is not a source of freedom. It is a recurring demand for resources he cannot reliably command. And if his real goal is ordinary trade, a broad cargo vessel with fewer crew members may serve him better. A longship only justifies itself when speed, shallow access, manpower, protection, or political reach is valuable enough to cover everything sacrificed to create them. Go back to the opening picture. The sail rises. 60 oars enter the water. The ship moves as though one person made a decision and the vessel simply obeyed. But before that moment, trees were cut, iron was worked, tar was burned, fiber was spun, cloth was woven, food was stored, repairs were completed, households released workers, and dozens of people decided, or were required, to appear at the same place. That is what owning the longship really meant at the highest level, not keeping a famous wooden object on the shore, keeping the entire chain behind it strong enough that the ship could leave the shore again,